Coming up on The Returned.
I started shooting towards space, towards what would be that dark tunnel with the light at the end. I'm at the tunnel. I'm trying to see what's happening, and there to greet me is my little dog, Joy, who was my dog that I had during my entire childhood. I was quickly sent through that tunnel, and the Lord Jesus appears.
Hi, and welcome to The Returned. Here's to everything we'll discover together. Hi, and welcome to The Returned. If you're new here, I'm MJ, and in this space, we share near-death stories, out-of-body experiences, spiritual awakenings, signs from spirit, and the journeys of healers and lightworkers from around the world. Well, all I can say is, oh my goodness, because today I have the honor of sitting here with the amazing Marilynn Hughes. Her spiritual journey began early in her life. She had a profound near-death experience, and her out-of-body experiences have taken her beyond this world. Marilynn, welcome to The Returned.
Thank you so much, MJ. I'm honored to be here. I appreciate the
Oh.
invitation.
Oh, thank you so much. Marilynn, before we move into your near-death experience itself, I'd love to begin just before the moment when you think back to that season of your life. What was happening with you?
Well, at that time, I had given birth to my third child, and he was my son. And I had a very strange, well, I guess it's not strange, but it's a little bit rare complication of pregnancy called peripartum cardiomyopathy. And so I was in heart failure. My heart was enlarged. And what happens is your pump function, um, mm, it, it, um, it goes down, so you go into you don't have good pump function. The the walls to your heart thin out and things like that. And so
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot going on with trying to control that with medications and things like that. But I had been up to Denver to be typed out for a heart transplant before, which they do generally when you're in that range. And, they make sure that they do all the things. They take lots of blood and they see what you're compatible to and if you're a candidate, so that when the time comes that they can do this sort of thing. So what basically kind of happened was, things were kind of going downhill in the heart situation. The testing they had been doing showed that the pump function was getting worse, and they were like, we may need to consider the transplant option. And I lived in a small town on the western slope of Colorado. So what they were thinking of doing was a cardiac catheterization to see what the situation was. They were going to have a chopper on standby that would take me up there where I would wait to receive a heart if that's what they determined was going to be the situation, in which they were thinking, well, that's what we were going to do. And so that's kind of what was happening. Everyone was
Mm-hmm.
getting prepared. I had 3 kids, little kids, and so a lot of stress, right? You know what I mean?
I'd say.
So, my situation was a little different in that what happened was the night before the procedure, I had something happen, which is kind of undefined because it happened at home. So something
Mm-hmm.
happened during the night. Could have been some kind of fibrillation or uh, what do you call those, arrhythmia type things in the night.
Mm-hmm.
Anything could have happened. Don't know what it would have been, but I had a near death experience. And so,
Yeah.
so I went into, I started shooting towards space, went towards what would be that dark tunnel with the light at the end that many people report seeing. And in my experiences, because, at this point, I've already had thousands of out of body experiences. So this is nothing new to me in the sense of
Mm-hmm.
having spiritual experiences. To me, that also is very similar to what I call the time tunnel, where people travel forward and backward in time in the spiritual realms, but this is the tunnel that people report in near-death experiences. So I head out there. I'm at the tunnel, and the tunnel is obviously a little different tonight. So, you know, so the tunnel is, um, I'm trying to see what's happening, and there to greet me is my little dog, Joy, who was my dog that I had during my entire childhood, 25 years. Just a little black and white little terrier dog, and she's waiting in the light. And I was very young at the time, pretty young, so um, that's who was waiting, right? You know what I mean? And
Oh,
so I was really excited to see my dog. You get in these experiences, there's a heightened emotional sense that occurs and a heightened sense of love that you
mhm.
experience towards everything and everyone you see. So I was just so excited to see my little dog. Um, but then I was quickly sent through that tunnel and to what would be this barrier that is where uh, the light is, and this is the barrier between this world and the next. And as soon
Mhm.
as I get to that, it's very ethereal, it's light, it's moving, it's sparkly, it's like clouds of light. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And there's a certain awareness that, oh, if I cross this barrier, I can't come back. I knew that interiorly. It was subconscious. I just knew that. And so I put my hand up and I just wanted to touch it, but I knew I could not pass it unless I was making a decision I was not going back. And at somewhere around this point, I'm moving back further out of the tunnel, and the Lord Jesus appears, and he's wearing the robes of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which is the white and the red. And he's standing there in all his glory, and he's just amazing and beautiful. And you can, in this type of experience, it's almost like your eyes are caught in mesmerization on his beauty. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Oh,
So you're
yes.
just like awestruck. You
Mhm.
take the way people might respond to, seeing their favorite celebrity, and multiply that by about 2 trillion times, and so you're just like, you're mesmerized by this holy energy that overtakes you, and you're like in a holy awe. In the background, I can see the earth just in the distance, and I can hear from the earth, and this is something I talk about in my other books, experiences I previously had. You can hear the thoughts of humanity. You can hear the chaos. You can hear the people talking, complaining, going through their stuff, and different all the different what you might call the mass retain of Earth. And the mass retain,
Mhm.
how would I define that? It's the consciousness of humankind, right?
Okay.
Um, And so you're hearing that, and that is a different type of energy. And all of a sudden you're here and you're in this holy awe with the Lord. And he expresses to me in some nonverbal way that he's going to give me a special grace where he's going to take me beyond that light and take me into those worlds beyond and let me see some things, and that it's okay for me to do that. And uh, I'm not going to be like, not able to have choice in the end. He's going to just give me this special grace. And he takes me by the hand and we just go whoosh, speed of light or beyond or whatever it is, just beautiful. We go through that barrier and we enter into these realms that are so hard to describe that I have a hard time describing them because there are no words for them. But they were these different worlds within the afterlife world. So it's like
Mhm.
cities of light, but also worlds of light. And something that also I would say, like Paramahamsa Yogananda spoke of, called like the astral
Mhm.
planets. It's like these different types of worlds that exist where there are different levels of souls who are evolving, differently,
Mm.
different levels of heavenly splendor. And one of the things I remember was each of these different worlds, each of these different realms, each of these different cities of light, you know, they all had like this emanation of color. And apologize, I have this problem with my throat.
No
But
problem.
it there was this, so it was like each one of them emanated like one particular color. And this was important somehow.
Mhm.
So like one of the worlds might be emanating this burgundy, and another would be different shades of blues. And there was something in these colors, obviously yellows and greens and purples and pinks and,
Mhm.
all these different colors. And I remember that that was so important. And it had something to do with the different types of energy that was to be found in those different worlds, in the afterlife worlds. They all contained different elements, different energies and frequencies, and different qualities that souls were seeking to cultivate, within themselves and their afterlife experiences, right? And so we go through all these worlds, and then he brings me back to the tunnel. And at the tunnel, there is this measuring stick, and it's pretty simple measuring stick. And on the measuring stick, he shows me two measuring sticks. One is the general measuring stick of souls in the world, and one is what I have attained myself and where I'm at on that measure. And it's a measurement of selfishness to selflessness. And the world he shows me is at the very bottom, which is like at the basic level of selfishness. And and then he shows me where he shows that my stick is up there near closer to the top, and he says you have worked for this, and you have reached this certain level of selflessness, and you are free to go. You have achieved what you needed to achieve in this lifetime you've had, and
Mm.
you can go if you choose to do so. And then he directs my attention back to the earth that is behind us. Um, and this is where we get into some intense moments together where
Mhm.
we're now standing, and he's conveying to me this basic, very basic understanding of our purpose on earth, which is going from selfishness to selflessness, and how important that is. Um, and this is kind of like part of the human journey and part of what we're doing here, why we come here. And then, so he basically asks me, and we're now face to face. And my back is toward the tunnel. He's facing the tunnel. Earth is behind him, and I'm facing the earth. And he's like, so you can go if you want, but you do have the choice. You can go back. And I looked at him and I said, well, as long as it's a choice, I have to go back because I have these three young kids, right? I've
Mhm.
got to go back. I've got to raise those kids. And he looks at me and says, okay, then what I want you to do is I want you to go back and I want you to pray for a heart transplant. And my head kind of went down a little bit, and I was like, and I'm like, he said, I can't do that, Lord. And he just kind of looks at me and he's like, okay. And I just said, what I can do, this is what I will do. I will go back and I will pray that you spare the life of the perfectly healthy person who would have to die to give me a heart.
Oh.
And I will take my chances with the heart that
Oh.
you've given me. And he was
Oh.
silent for a few moments. It was like a very, 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 very poignant moment between us. And he's looking at me, square in the eyes. And he says, I grant that. And he takes my hands and we start shooting back through space. And he's telling me as we go through space I'm not going to heal you, but I am going to help you. And he says, I'm going to make good use of the time you have left on earth. And then we stop in this like way station before we get back to earth. And it's like we end up in like what would be like a book cafe that you would see
Mm.
in the, back in the time when I had the experience where people would go to a little cafe where there would be a bookstore right around.
Mhm.
And we're sitting at a table and he's just sitting there staring at me and talking. And then he says, look up. And he points, and there's this whole bookshelf of books. And he says it, he can, repeats the idea, I'm going to make good use of you while in the time you have left on earth. And I look up and I'm like, there's a whole lot of books on that shelf. I mean, it's not just one shelf, it's the whole shelf. And I'm like, looking closely, and it takes me a minute to realize, but then I start realizing my name is on all of them. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, and I'm kind of like, it's kind of like we're talking, but yet conveying telepathically. And I'm kind of like saying, but are you saying I'm going to write all of those? And at the time of this experience, I'd written 2 books, you know, and so I was, like, huh? And basically he didn't answer the question. He just kept pointing at it. And I just looked at it and felt very overwhelmed, right? You know, and confused because, but I looked at him very closely because I was like, okay, well, I better look at these closely because if I'm supposed to do this, I better try to remember, what all this is, and then it's like whoosh, he's taking my hand and poof, all of a sudden I'm coming back into my body, back on earth. Okay. And so I'm like, you know, blown away by the experience, but we have to hurry up and get to the hospital, right? So we go to the hospital. I go and get my catheterization. And, the short part of it is I come out of, the chopper's waiting, right? Everything's,
Mm.
everything is planned. I wake up in the same hospital and I just ask my cardiologist, I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, well, we can't explain it, but for some reason, your heart is doing significantly better than it was last week. You're still in heart failure and stuff, but I think we're going to manage it with meds and, let's see what happens. And I was like, cool, great. And, I knew what happened, but I obviously wasn't going to say anything because I didn't really want to explain that.
Yeah.
um, and so that's kind of what went down. And what was really
Wow.
interesting is that it was almost like the Holy Spirit put like a holy forgetfulness over me about those shelves. And it was like, I'd say 5 or 6 years later, I had this
Mhm.
moment where I looked on the bookshelf of my writings because I just started writing like crazy,
Mhm.
forgetting that, he had shown me all that. I just forgot it. I didn't forget it, but it was like out of my mind. I just started doing whatever I was told, right? And like 5 or 6 years later, I had this moment where I just looked at the bookshelves that have the books I've written. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, that's the series that was on the top shelf. That's the series, I recognized them. And ironically now, you can't see it on the film here, but right over there, it's basically the full, floor to ceiling bookshelf filled with all the books
Wow.
that I was told to write. And it was
Wow.
interesting how it was done because the forgetfulness is brought in so that you will just kind of go with the flow of the spirit as it moves through you and you just focus on one book at a time, one job at a time, right? Otherwise I would have probably like been so overwhelmed that I couldn't have done any of it, right?
Wow. My goodness. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
What an experience. Wow.
It was beautiful. I was very, very sacredly honored to have the experience, and I
Mm.
feel very humbled by it. And
Mhm.
ironically, then, I'm trying to think of it was actually 12 years later, my heart was actually spontaneously healed. No medical explanation, and it's been fine for 10 years now. And
Wow.
it was a condition which, basically I should have been gone a long, long time ago. It's 25 something years later.
Wow. That
Yeah,
is amazing. That reminds me uh, about mine because mine started from a mysterious heart problem that just all of a sudden dawned on me. And um, I had my near death, and then all of a sudden, poof, no heart problem.
really
And they couldn't
interesting, very
explain
similar.
what
Yeah,
was going on. They could not explain it.
yeah,
So I really can empathize and understand a little bit of that.
yeah.
How incredible. It was incredible. What an incredible story.
Thank you, thank you.
So you're welcome. I just wanted to touch on just a couple little things before I move on to some other questions that I have for you because
Sure.
only because this part is about me. Sorry, but
Sure. No worries, no worries.
you were talking about the tunnel, right?
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, that's the only thing that I fear is the tunnel.
Interesting,
I do
okay.
not want to go in a tunnel. And I'll be honest, I pray, like, please don't ever put me in that tunnel. I just get claustrophobic, and I also don't like roller coasters. And then you hear some of these near death experiences of whoo, whoo, and then they're flying like through space. I would be scared, I think.
Interesting. Wow.
Mhm. Mhm. But then I think about your testimony, and I think, well, we probably don't feel afraid because we're in such a higher frequency and we're no longer in this human body.
No, we're in the spirit form, and, the thing that
Mhm.
makes me immediately think of is, and ironically, an experience I had a few nights ago too, which I'll throw in
Mhm.
there, but the
Sure.
tunnels, because there's a lot of tunnels, and so I've talked about this a lot when I talk about the initiations into the mysteries and the rites of passage, but it applies as well to out of body travel because you're traveling to different realms, to different spheres, to different, when you first have an out of body experience, you're going to usually go to the astral plane, but you're going to travel through different corridors, tunnels, um, portals. You know what I mean? There's
Mhm.
different, so there portals or and different things that take you into these other spheres of existence. So, another way to look at it that makes it a little more physical and grounded is, interstates and exits. You know what I mean? It's
Mm.
it's it's
Mhm.
it's really that simple, is that's what you're doing. You're learning a new map of how do you get to where you want to go, right? It's just a little bit like another kind of interstate. But the thing that I would tell you, because of the tunnels and the claustrophobia, is that, with the exception of one tunnel that I think would be different. And I think what you have to remember is the Holy Spirit understands our fears, and they would work that out with you
Right.
and have you do it differently. And that has to do with the Garden of Eden and this particular
Mm.
ritual passage. But the rest of the tunnels that you go through and the portals are expansive things. And so,
Okay.
like, even that tunnel in the near death experience, it's an ethereal construct. So if you
Okay.
understand it as it's an immaterial thing, it's not a solid creation. You're never like fully enclosed in the same way that we
Mhm.
experience it in the physical world. And so when you go in these tunnels, what's happening is it's actually transporting you to a higher vibration and a higher frequency and moving you into something higher or something else that you need to experience. And
Mhm.
so the the confinement part of it, I think, is more something that is in your mind rather than in reality, because what it actually is doing is expanding you. It's actually taking you out of confinement. Do you see?
Okay.
And so,
Yes.
and ironically, I'm getting really slammed where in your mind you're thinking, I'm gonna be confined, I'm gonna be controlled, I'm gonna be scared, when in reality it's actually freeing you. It's taking you
Yeah.
higher. increasing your vibration, your frequency, and it's taking you where you need to go to take that next spiritual step that your soul
Okay.
needs. And so part of what might help is, first of all, looking at the tunnels as immaterial constructs. These are ethereal creations. These are not solid.
Mhm.
And then realizing that every single one, tunnels, portals, uh, every single one, almost every single one of them, when you enter and then go through, you're going to go through in an ecstatic bliss kind of state. And that part of the
Oh,
reason for
okay.
that is because you're getting transported into this next step, next level, higher vibration, whatever it is that you actually needs to experience next. And
I see.
so start thinking of it differently, because reprogram your
Okay.
mind differently so that you can start realizing it's actually freeing you rather than confining you. You can even use
That's
that as a mantra, you know,
I
it's
actually
freeing me,
will.
it's not
Yeah.
confining me. It's freeing me, it's not confining me. You see what I mean?
Mhm. Yes. I'll add that in with the one I do every night, every morning, and every almost all day. But
Yeah,
seriously, I do also feel that that's probably my human side kicking in,
right.
right? Just when
Mhm.
I'm hearing some of the near deaths, like they went just flying down a tunnel feet first. It's like, could you even imagine? Like, I can't be
Yes.
the only one out there that would feel that way, you know? But again, here we are with our human mind going, right?
Well, and with that,
So,
part of that
mhm.
is that a lot of people are afraid of, and I write about this in several of my books on how to have the out of body experiences. People are afraid of the powerful nature of the experience. And so, yes, if you're going, you know, it can when it's first happening, it's going
Oh.
to either you're going to respond with excitement, fear, or you're just blown away by how much power it is. A lot of times you actually throw yourself back into your body if it's just an out of body experience, because it's either you're scared, it's so powerful, you were so shocked by it, it just knocked you back, and
Mhm.
so these are natural reactions to it. But the
Right.
reality is that the powerful nature of it, as you allow yourself to move into that, you're actually making it possible for your soul to move higher, and these really become
Ah,
blissful experiences, actually.
I see. Well, I'm really glad to hear that. That means I need to do a little bit more work on that, right? And it's
Yeah.
always good because we're always learning. Always learning.
And it's good to know, good for you to know that this is not an uncommon fear, the
Oh,
powerful
that's
nature of
another
it.
good thing.
Yeah, it is. It's very common for people to be very startled and afraid of the power of those
Mhm.
experiences, and like this one that I was talking about, I had just a couple nights ago. It was literally like a waterfall roller coaster of light. And literally, as you move through it, you go into this ecstatic bliss, and your soul is transforming as it moves through until it reaches the end. But this again, these ritual passages, each one of them is altering your spiritual construct to a
Ah.
higher nature. And so
Mhm.
it's the initial fear of letting go, the
Mhm.
surrender, but that's part of the actual spiritual journey, is learning how to surrender to God and
Mhm.
letting go so that the Holy Spirit can kind of take hold of you and do its
Yeah.
work, right?
That's very interesting, Marilyn, that you said that. When I had my near-death experience, there was a moment when I felt this need of surrender, where all of a
Yes.
sudden it just came over me like I just surrendered. I wasn't fighting the heart anymore. I wasn't it was a very new feeling for me. Maybe this will help someone if they hear this because
Right.
that is what I actually experienced was all of a sudden I just not that I went limp, but I just went, I can't fight with this. There is no
Right.
point. And it's just like you surrendered and that's when everything happened.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
an interesting thought that you brought that up. You know, I'm having a really strong deja vu right now. I
Okay.
wrote on top of the page, strong deja vu. I'm having a very strong deja vu right now. This is very interesting. Like I've done this before almost, or something, you know? It's very interesting.
Maybe we've met before,
So
maybe it was preordained.
I wonder. I'm really, really feeling that. So before I get to a few of questions that kind of lead to something else, I was wondering, did you ever see your body?
I did a few times, yes, in terms of you mean during the near-death experience or during other
Yeah,
experiences?
during your
No,
near-death experience.
during my near-death experience, I'd say no. I actually did
Hmm.
not. I
But
did not.
acted as if you had a body, right?
Um, I was very aware that I did have a body. I was aware of
Yeah.
that. Yes, but I did
Hmm.
not see it. I just I was
Yeah.
gone. I was like it was like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
I would be too if when I seen him, I was gone too. Believe me, I was in complete awe thinking about nothing. So I understand that. Now, when you got to these heavenly places, did you ever have a feeling of remembering that you've been there before?
Um, absolutely. Um, I would say, like, some of the things that he showed me that night were
Mhm.
more, new to me, but I've had, these thousands of out-of-body experiences, and I've had so many experiences of places that I have absolutely no question, I've been there before, and ironically too, you know, where things have been shown to me clearly, where they tell me, "Look, this is where you decided that you were going to do this in this lifetime. This
Yeah.
is what," and they even showed me, like, the first book that I wrote and said, "Look, here, it was written before you were ever born." I was like, "Oh, so this was all preordained." And yes, it actually was, and then, they would take me to the Akashic records and show me things I had agreed to do, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, so I agreed to do that. I guess I have to do that." Things I didn't wanna do, work with souls, work with lost souls, ghosts, and things that freaked me out at first because I it doesn't freak me out as much now, but it did back then, when I first was
Mhm.
introduced to it. So they had to take me to the Akashic records to say, look what you agreed to do." And I was like, "Oh, I guess I have to do it." Things like that. But going to places that you definitely know you've been before. I've been to past lifetimes I've had, many of them. But it's also places that you've been to and traveled extensively in between lifetimes, in the
Mhm.
cities of light, in the heavens, the galactic heavens, um, on
Yeah.
different planets, even, in alien worlds. It's very extensive. One of the things that I realized was that the universe is just so much huger than we in our physical bodies remember. We remember such
Mhm.
a small portion of
Uh-huh.
who we really are as the whole.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, when we get there, it's gonna be like, "What? We knew
Yeah.
this the whole time." Right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So these worlds that you speak of, I am very interested. So a couple things. Where do you feel that heaven or the afterlife is? Is it right here beside us? Is it a dimension that's like just boom, where frequency is not high enough so we can't see it? Or is it up there? Is it down there? Like over
Heaven
there?
is so expansive that it's really hard
Hmm.
for us to understand in the physical world because heaven does overlap us here.
Hmm.
Sometimes our loved ones have purposes and tasks that are given to them to
Mm,
be involved or watch over. Some of us, in their afterlife, sometimes that's part of their job. But in terms of where is heaven, um, there are many different heavens, you know?
okay.
So there's the galactic heavens, which
Hmm.
is what I always kind of considered like the traditional heaven, and that
Okay.
would be this beautiful place. You actually travel through these circling star tunnels. which are yellow, red, and blue. You travel through them and then you move through what I call the stained glass hallway in the galactic heavens to get through that. And then you enter into this, it's like a system of planetary worlds. And it's just a most beautiful place where all the souls, and you'll see souls there from all different time frames, but you will also see souls of extraterrestrial origin there. And so this is the heaven of many worlds, not just our own. And it's just a beautiful, peaceful place. And um,
Mm.
I'm trying to think how to put this because it is part and parcel of what I call the city of the New Jerusalem, which is, where you have the golden streets and the buildings that are made of diamonds and amethyst and gemstones and sapphires and all these beautiful creations. And there they
Mhm.
have, it's called the Palace of Ancient Knowledge, which is the library of the ancient sacred texts that everything that has ever been written, a
Mm.
holy text on earth. But guess what? There are galactic sacred texts too. And so there's libraries of sacred texts from other worlds. And so we have that. And so in the city of the New Jerusalem, where Christ reigns over all, but we also have the royal family of God, which is all the prophets,
Mm.
saints, mystics, sages, and ascetics, um, who from every world religion and tradition who have ever, had a holy mission. Um, they live and work there in this world that is part of the galactic heavens, right? But then they're in the galactic heavens. Part of the galactic heavens are some of these astral planets, but among and beyond the astral planets is the place that you're seeing a lot of in my films, All the Winds of Heaven, which is the
Mhm.
Pure
Yep.
Lands. And this is where the prophets, saints, mystics, sages, and ascetics gather and stay. And this is particularly a world for those who have served and continue to serve the redemption worlds. And we are one of those redemption worlds, but there are many redemption worlds. We're not the only one, right? And so they all gather. So, all the prophets, saints, mystics, and sages, Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha, Jesus Christ, Krishna, Zarathustra, Thoth, I have a whole
Wow.
list of when you go in the films, you'll see that they are there along with all of the saints and the mystics and the sages and how they all gather and they talk with one another about different things they're doing on the redemption worlds. They work with one another and it's this beautiful place with diamond ocean. The mountains are
Oh.
like crystalline and diamond and amethyst trees, a golden river too. And then I have a little log cabin there. And so I'm allowed to go there and stay there during the nights at times and then meet with these great masters and have these beautiful conversations with them where they teach me and tell me things I need to understand so that I can write about them and, do these things. And so the Pure Lands are among this, what I call the galactic heavens, which is this much bigger picture of where is heaven, right? But it's
Right.
this vast space, but then we have to understand when we, even with the galactic heavens, there is more, and so it's so much bigger than I could ever explain, and probably so much bigger than I can even understand, because I'm only able to see what I can comprehend. And I
Right.
don't think I fully comprehend because God is so massive and so huge. And the worlds that have been created are so much grander than our little tiny minds in our human form can comprehend, that we are given to see what we can handle. And I don't think that I can fully even explain because I don't think I've seen it all, right? I've seen so
Mhm.
much, and yet I know that there is so much more. So you have like, that this is the galactic heavens where all of creation and all these things, but there are also the higher heavens. And this would be the Empyrean heavens and places, where
Right.
There was one experience I had where I was allowed to go to the throne room of God and experience what it was like to witness and like ride with the mind of God as he worked just one night in the millions and millions and millions of souls in one night as he just went from one soul to another and did all these energetic adjustments and tried to help souls in the redemption of their souls and in the human race. And it was so amazing and mind blowing and
Wow.
overwhelming. And this place, this throne room is somewhere else. You know, what I would say somewhere probably in the Empyrean heavens, right? Somewhere I can't comprehend. And it was just, an unbelievable honor that I was allowed to experience it one time, right? It's not
Wow.
something that I can comprehend or even really put into words in any really fair way, because what I experienced was so beautiful beyond words, but there really are no words to explain it. But one thing I would say about it was I was just so mind blown by the presence of God everywhere
Mm.
all the time and the mercy of God that he responds instantaneously
Mhm.
everywhere all the time. It wasn't like, it wasn't like concurrently. It was everywhere all the time. And it was so precise. He knows what we need and he knows when we need it. And he knows that about every living thing that he's ever created. It was it was just so I it was unbelievable. Probably the most amazing experience I've ever had.
It really sounds like it. Like, I can't even
Mhm.
imagine.
Yeah.
So, thinking about that vastness, because it's
Mhm.
vast,
Yeah.
right? So when you talk about God being in everything and working everything, would that be something we would see him doing? Or would we is this like, I don't even know how I'm trying to say this, but it just came to me. Is it like a, what is God to you when you go there and you see that? Is this a man sitting there and has like power to, I don't know how to ask you, but
I think I know what
is
you're
he a
saying.
man sitting in a throne conducting everything down here, in your opinion? Or is this more of like a energy or
Well, I've had experiences where he'll appear in, whatever way we need him to so that we can comprehend
uh,
him. It's like when I was 9, he appeared as a man in a throne next to Jesus Christ, the Son. But in this experience in the throne room, he was this ever living, moving energy that moved and bended
oh
and
wow.
swayed through all life at all times and was present in
Mm,
all things. It was like, if you can imagine,
okay.
like, um, I'm trying to remember it might even be a Michelangelo painting. I'm thinking of where you see, an old wise master and he breathes. It's like
Oh.
God breathes and all things are moved by it. I see God as the breath of everything. He is everything.
Mhm.
His energy moves and is in everything at all times, everywhere. Um, and it was like moving, moving, moving everywhere all the time. It was like this movement, if you can kind of see what I'm doing. He was
Yes, I
everywhere
sure
moving.
can.
And
Mhm.
it was like, when you think of the concept of the universal being of energy, but it's so much more than that. Because,
Mhm.
the universal being of energy really consists of souls, all of us and what
Right.
we create. And then what God is this greater thing that lifts it all up, you know? And so it's this moving, bending, swaying energy. It's,
So
it,
is the word consciousness like too small? Is it like a
if
God
you're
consciousness?
talking about God that way, yes, it is so small. It's
Yeah.
like, I guess it would be like calling a volcano a match.
Okay. So it's
Um,
he's just every single thing.
He is
He's everything.
everything. And think of God as the breath of all life. Think of God as everything, everything. And,
I like that.
it's hard, because I know that people struggle with this concept when they see that good and evil exists, right? But part of the deal here is we're in a mortal realm. This is all part of what I was taught through all my things, all my
Mhm.
experiences. And we're in a mortal realm. This is a realm where good and evil exist. It's something we
That's
are
right.
supposed to work to purify within ourselves and all around us in our world. So we see good and evil within ourselves and all around us.
That's right.
Um, God is not in the evil, but God moves through that evil. God moves through everything. And that's how God creates good out of evil, you know? So it's hard for people to say, well, I can't believe in God because I saw evil. And it's like, well, God didn't do that. That wasn't God. That was us. We make
Mhm.
those choices. We have free will. So that's
I was just gonna
humanity.
say.
Right. Yeah. And so one of
Mhm.
the biggest things that people have the difficulty in realizing is that that the free will means that people do stupid things, and that has nothing to do with God. Now, in the real final analysis, who is God? God
Mhm.
is the emanation of love. And people, when they
Mm.
hear that, get very confused because they confuse it with human love. They don't know what love is. And what God is as love is everything, right? It's
Yeah.
everything. It is the breath of all that lives and breathes and has life. And so what is the darkness? What is the opposite? It is death. It is the thing that takes breath, takes life, and takes things backwards, because love brings things forward. Life and breath bring things forward. The opposite takes things backwards, takes away life, makes things go
Mhm.
backwards. But God, in his essence, is always moving to energize, create,
Mm.
rebuild, make things new. That's what
I've got
love
really bad goosebumps.
That's what love is, right? So we
Mhm.
get all confused because, one of the things I also write a lot about is what's the difference between a karmic and eternal love, And so even when we talk about eternal love on earth, that is also an earthly eternal love. What God is, what love is as God, is still so far beyond our human understanding. It's something much greater. It is an emanation of a quality that we don't possess, but we
Mhm.
want to we want to get acquainted with it. We want to come closer to it. And so here we are, right? We're on earth. Everyone's like, "Well, what are we doing here? Why are we here?" It's real simple. Path of purification. Why do we want to purify? It's because we want to move closer to that. We want to move closer to God, right?
Mhm.
Everybody wants what? They want love, you know? And so
That's
if
right.
you want to be loved and you want love, you have
Mhm.
to go in one direction only. You have to move towards God because that's who God is. That's where love is. That is the essence and only contact point for the true emanation of love in the universe. So if you try to throw God out of the mix, you're not going to get there. You cannot do that. You cannot throw him out. If you understand this, and then you're like, okay, so then what I'm doing is I'm starting to understand what are these things that are keeping me away from that all holy good. These are the
Mhm.
things, these are the habits, the ideas, the misunderstandings, the the vices, the whatever it is that is not in alignment with me moving closer to that all holy emanation of love, which is
Mhm.
God, then you understand why the path of purification is essential for every human soul to reach him. And that's why
Yeah.
we're all here. It's that simple. Is we're all trying to find that love, which is God. We're trying to reunite with it. And that's why you hear this in near death experiences. I felt that love. I've never felt
That's
anything
right.
like it. It's
No.
because that's what they're touching. They're touching that emanation of love, which we don't understand yet, but we want it. Every single one of us wants it.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. You are so, so right.
yeah,
Yeah.
but we have this tendency to fight against it, right? We don't want to just be honest and say we want that. And so we have to also then be honest about, well, what are the things that keep us from moving towards it then? So in
Yeah.
Buddhism, they have these things that they do that are often helpful because a lot of times I tell people this in Christianity, we can get caught up in guilt and shame and calling it sin. Whereas in Buddhism, they can make it a little more analytical and it becomes a little bit more like, well, what is actually going to help me to do this? They call it cravings, fetters, attachments, and it's like,
Mm.
okay, well, this fetter is holding me away from that love of God so I'm going to work to remove this fetter, this craving, whether it's greed, lust, money, food, whatever, it's holding me away from that. So I'm going to work on this craving, this attachment is pushing me backwards, right? I want to
Mhm.
go forwards. So I'm going to look at that attachment and see what I can do. It becomes a more analytical process. It's not so hard. You don't get so caught up in guilt and shame that you don't move forward, right? You're like, okay, I can take some steps to remove these fetters, cravings, and attachments and take a look at that because I want to go towards this which is God's love. I don't want to keep going that way. Well, if I
Where do you think we go from here? And basically what I'm asking is, in your near death experience, did you have an understanding of what might happen to us when we cross over?
yeah, in my near death experience I did. I saw a lot of these worlds, but I also have had one of the callings that was given to me was to aid souls in crossing over and in the afterlife
Oh.
experiences that they have. And basically, the easiest way to understand it is we go where we're compatible. So we move in spirit to where we are compatible. So, if we're compatible to like there's hundreds of well, it's actually infinite, but there's infinite numbers of heavenly realms, infinite numbers of purgatorial realms, and there's fortunately infinite numbers of hell realms too. We go to what we're compatible to. So, if we are compatible to certain virtues or whatever, we're probably going to go upward in a little bit of an upward direction. If we have some things we need to work on in purification, we're going to go into some purgatorial realms where we're going to go undergo some purification. um, if we are engaging in some evil things, we might have to go into some lower spheres as well, right? We go where we're compatible, but then there's processes that souls go through after life that continue the journey we started here on earth that involve purifying and looking closely at the choices we've made and the people that we've hurt. We go through those processes where we actually feel the pain we've caused to other
Mhm.
people, which is really, really tough. I've gone through it myself.
Oh.
And it's very, very intense. You go through and you feel everything, as if you were you're experiencing what other people have felt. It's an extremely humbling experience because it's the time that you realize, why do I think other people need my forgiveness when I need so much forgiveness myself? It's a tough thing to go through, but very important, very profound for us. Um,
Mhm.
um, but that was tough. You know, and I'm sure I'll have to go through it again, 'cause yeah, I'm sure I'll have to go through it again and it won't be fun, but, you know, but, the things that we go through have to do with, um, all the things that, we don't understand or things, a lot depends on the circumstances of your death, what was going on, if people have, I mean, there's so many different circumstances, I've
Yeah,
helped
of
people who
course.
went through horrible, horrible suicides where they uh, might have actually participated in the death of another suicide, and then they themselves committed suicide, and as a result ended up in a hellish realm. But then over a period of a couple of years, they both ended up rising to a beautiful heavenly sphere. There
Mhm.
is processes for souls that really want to work through um, the things, the difficulties, for them to do that. There is a wonderful book, for anyone who's interested in it, by A. Farnese. It's called A Wanderer in the Spirit Lands. It was written in the 1800s, late 1800s, and it's a book written about the journey of a soul who does enter into a hellish realm and goes through the process of working his way back up into heaven. And I know that that
Wow.
might be controversial for some, depending on what their
Mhm.
particular religious views are, but I'll just throw it out there if you're interested in it. It's a very interesting read for anyone who is interested in that process, because that book does cover it pretty well. It's not totally accurate according to what I've seen. That doesn't, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? But it's got a lot of very helpful and interesting information in it. Um, the majority of the souls that I deal with and work with are souls that are going into heavenly spheres, but they will go through some purgation, some purification
Mhm.
after death. And it's not like it's it's not it's the stuff you would expect. It would
Mhm.
it's the kinds of things that they have to purify, the things that they misunderstood about the people they loved, the things that they misunderstood about God, the things that they misunderstood about relationships with one another, things that they might have misunderstood about their path in life. They're going to go over, these are the things you wanted to achieve in your lifetime, and these are the things you did achieve, and these are the things you didn't, and let's look at that and see what we can do to address these things. It's really going to be a lot of that. That's mostly what it is.
Mhm.
Um, there will be some souls who have to go through and purify things that are maybe a little bit harder. But it's
Yeah.
important to realize for souls who have the harder things that God has a mechanism for all of that. Because a big part of my calling was to work with souls in purgatories and even in the hells. Um, there was
Okay.
a there was a bodhisattva who wrote a text on the same thing. He was called to the same thing. He had to work with the souls who were in the lower hell realms. And what I have found is that what David said in the Psalms is true. You know, God, you are in the highest of heavens, but even in the lowest of hells, you are also there. And the moment a soul asks for help,
Mm.
no matter where they may be, it is sent. And there is a mechanism for souls that when they have things to work through, that they are given help. But it's just a matter of compatibility. We go where we're compatible. So if you have spent your life in some kind of uh, situation that's very, very dark, you might go into a place where you're going to have to deal with those dark things. But don't think that there's not a mechanism there, that there's not help. The thing
Mhm.
everyone should always remember is no matter what happens after death, you call out for Jesus and you call out to God, because you will have help immediately and they will guide you through the whole thing. There is all of this love that comes in. And you know what happens is um, I remember Saint Faustina received the revelation of the divine mercy. And Jesus told
Mm.
her, I think this is so important for every human walking. He said that every soul will come through the door of my mercy before they ever have to face the door of my justice. And it's only the souls that refuse my mercy that even have to deal with that, right? And he said to her, my soul clamors to pour out my mercy on souls. And everyone including yourself, I'm sure, who's had a near-death experience, knows
Mhm.
that there is this love, this unconditionally loving thing that we experience that shows that, God created us. He knew that we were going to be human beings. He knew we would be fallen beings. He knew we were going to be imperfect and have all kinds of flaws. He made us to be that way. So he's not clueless. You know what I mean? He gets it because he actually created us to be this way. So he has all of these mechanisms in place for, the mechanics of existence, right?
Mhm.
And so there's something in place for everything. There really is for everything. And you just have to ask God to help you with it. And the minute you do, it's there for whatever it might
Mhm.
be. Because there literally is never too late. It's literally never too late. It's you always have to call for help. And the moment you do, it's not too
Yeah.
late. Now, so the majority of souls are going to go through a beautiful, peaceful, and profound, unconditionally loving experience. And they're going to be so blown away by the freedom, what we were talking about
Mm.
there. They're going to be reunited with their loved ones. They're going to be, um, and one of the cool things too is that you're not just reunited with your loved ones from now, but you get reunited with your loved ones from previous generations, sometimes ancestors you don't even
Mm.
know you have, you know. And another thing that sometimes all will happen is you get reunited with people from past lives that you don't remember here, but you go and you wake up and it's a different phase of the death experience. So it's not going to happen in the near death. But when you're further along, you're
Mhm.
going to come into a room and all these people you have loved, all these thousands of years are there. And all of a sudden it's like a light goes on and you're like, oh my God, I remember you. I remember you. And it's just there's so much um there's so much, and it's so much beauty. And, we forget that God is God, and therefore he has this amazing, perfect way
Mhm.
that is so much bigger than can really even be explained, if that makes sense.
It totally does. When we come here and we forget everything, then we have an NDE. In your opinion, do you think that that's a way of being kind of put back on your path to remember why you were here and what
Yeah.
maybe you're supposed to be doing in a sense?
I do think that that is definitely the case. I think that, I think there's a great mystery in the forgetfulness. People are always asking that question, why do we not remember? And it's because
Mhm.
we have to bring the memory of of it's how do we even put that in a word? Is we have to bring the memory of all these things into
Mhm.
the physical world, into our body. We have to bring that consciousness into awakeness. The near death experience accelerates that. And I
Yeah.
do think that God uses it for that purpose. And so,
Mhm.
we now are in this unique time that started somewhere in the 1970s when people started having more medical options. So people could have these, coming back from the dead experiences that were not as likely to happen before because of medical reasons, right? And now we
Right.
we have a lot of people who are having this, and it does provide for this opportunity for people to have a flash of memory that is profound enough that opens the door, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what it does is it provides this opportunity to start what can become the opening of this eternal memory
Mm.
that we want to bring from heaven to earth and embody in our physical self. And that's part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring the virtues rather than the vices into our souls. And it's hard for every one of us because we are fighting that battle between selfishness and selflessness. And
Yeah.
it's a difficult battle, right?
Mhm.
Knowing what the right things to do are in so many different scenarios and situations, and then how this plays out in virtue and vice. But we want to bring the knowledge, and then um, a soul can have that moment in a near death experience that can actually
Mhm.
open something. And a lot of people who have those near death experiences do then start having more spiritual experiences, whether
That's
it's
right.
out of body travel or spiritually transformative experiences. People get different types of gifts, you know, and this helps them in their own unique ways, because the Holy Spirit chooses the gifts that are good for each one of us to embody that bigger part of their spiritual path into this
Mhm.
life, right?
Mhm. What about Marilyn, what about people that haven't? Does everyone, in your opinion, come here with a purpose?
Yes. We do come here with purposes, but the purposes are different. And so
Mhm.
I think one of the things that we forget and lose is that, oh, sorry, I think we
That's
put
okay.
an idea of what that purpose has to be. And so
Okay.
purpose can be something as, oh, I'm supposed to write a book, or I'm supposed to do something, or whatever, something like this, Well, but purpose is also a lot of times much, much simpler than this. Okay. We get very
Right.
caught up in the idea because our world focuses on um, personal achievements, right? The
Right.
purposes that we actually set out for our souls are actually much more focused on, even though there are things that we like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go be a scientist. I need to experience this, or I'm going to discover that, or I'm going to fly planes. You know what I mean? It's going to be different
Mhm.
things. However, in terms of the purposes, it can be something as simple as I need to experience a lifetime where I'm a complete atheist. I need to experience
Mm.
that. Or
Mhm.
I need to go experience a lifetime, and I'm going to work out the relationship that I have had that is conflicted with this particular soul, but it's been conflicted for many, many lifetimes. Or I need to figure out how I'm going to um, work out um, having a lifetime where I have a wife and family, because in all my other lifetimes, I was a crazy cowboy and I died in gunfights, and I never did that,
Mhm.
Um, it can be all kinds of things where the purpose can be very personal for an experience the soul needs to have
Right.
about experiencing life. And so when we talk about that purpose, it doesn't have to be some big grand thing. We put this idea on our head and we make ourselves feel really stressed and overwhelmed. Oh my God, I haven't figured out my purpose. And sometimes it really isn't that complicated. It's actually sometimes what you're already doing and you're not
Mhm.
recognizing it. It's the things that have to do with the people you love. Because remember, God is love. And so a lot of times your purpose is already playing out in all the relationships and friendships and family around you, and you don't
Mhm.
even realize it, right?
That makes a lot of sense to me now, how you've broken that down. That really does make a lot of sense to me. I was just wondering about all of that. Um, that's very interesting because that makes so much sense. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
One question before I get to my next question.
Sure.
Um, how do you know the difference between an out-of-body experience and an NDE?
Well, in most instances, obviously, most people will have the medical situation that
Right.
makes it very, very clear. Um, in my situation, it was just a little bit different. And so you could probably say it might be a little bit more sketchy because it's unclear, right?
Mhm.
Um, in my case, I knew it to be what it was because of the fact that I was given the option, to go. And so
Right.
the situation was very clearly, um, what it was in that sense. But because I was at home, you know, so there's gonna be people, who have experiences that they won't be able to medically verify because it happens either at home or whatever, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And, but it doesn't invalidate the experience that they might have
That's right.
because for them, and that's important for people who are listening, the experience itself is going to have um, whatever meaning it has to them. It's going to have important clues and
Right.
things that are going to be important for them to take seriously and not discount just because, there's a lot of situations you'll see, like if you look at the, I don't know, the documentaries, the books and things, they're going
Uh-huh.
to do things to make sure that those are more medically verified. But there are a lot of people who will have things where, okay, well, this can't be medically verified. Um,
Right.
and but but what you want to remember is the experience itself needs to be whatever it is to you so that you don't miss
Uh-huh.
that moment and what
Mhm.
God was trying to convey to you at that time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely know what you mean. I totally know what you mean. Marilyn, are you afraid of dying?
No, I'm actually looking forward to it. When the time comes, it's like, okay, just let me know. I'm on the train. Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to
When
it. Really. The
Mhm.
only thing I worry about is like, the way that we go, like everyone
Yeah,
else.
of
I hope
course.
hope it
Of
doesn't suck.
course.
You know?
I keep saying that too. I really hope this doesn't suck when it's my time. It's
Right.
exactly that. No, it's like, you have died before, so you kind of already know what it feels like,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And in my experience, I didn't feel anything. I just woke up thinking I was still where I was.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's probably something similar to that,
I think it
right?
probably is for a lot of situations. I think, unfortunately, I know that it's not that way for everybody. I have worked with
Yeah.
the dying and so I know that some people go through
Mm.
more and some people go through less. It all just depends on
Mm.
how God takes us. And so,
I don't
you
want
know,
more.
I know, me neither.
I'll just
Me
take the
neither.
laughs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's I kind of think where we're all at. We'd all like it to be, the nice quick
I think
and
that's the only thing that scares us, doesn't it? Is just how, and
well,
because we can
I think
associate pain.
I think most people are afraid of that for sure, but I
Mhm.
have talked to a lot of people who are afraid of the process of dying itself and what might happen afterward. And so I do think there are people who are afraid of death itself. And so I think that is a separate fear. And that part I don't have any fear of. Um,
Mhm.
um, and of course I'd say the primary concern I always will have, which is just that, you know, I want to do the best I can by God, and I hope that, I make it to the end and do things correct, do things right, you know what I mean? And don't mess up too badly by the time I'm done here. I think like
I
everyone
don't think
feels,
so.
right?
I
Well,
think when you get there, Marilyn, there is gonna be one heck of a party for you, and
well,
a
that's very
lot of
kind.
people waiting.
Wow, that's
You've
very
done a
nice of
lot
you to
in this
say.
life, right, that we know of. I mean,
Well,
you
thank you.
do,
That's
and you
very
continually
kind.
do it. So, I mean, you've gotta there must be people going rooting you on like, "Oh my gosh, look at all those books." You know? "She did it in this lifetime? Wow." I think that's pretty awesome. It's
Thank
pretty
you.
cool.
Thank you very
Um
much. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're very welcome. For those no, 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 actually. So this is I'm just starting to introduce into a signature returned question onto my
Okay.
podcast. So I keep forgetting it, and I actually had to write it down on a sticky note. And it's like bright pink, so I can remember. Hey, don't forget. But every soul that brings, or sorry, every soul that returns back from an NDE always brings a truth. What is the truth you returned with that you would want everyone to know?
I think it really was that simple message that kind of really summarized, why we're here, which is to move from selfishness to selflessness, kind of really
Mm,
made it simple for me and, uh, kind of, clarified it, you know?
right.
And so I think it was that. And so I hope that's helpful to some people out there.
Absolutely, that will be. This whole entire conversation is going to be helpful, right?
Thanks. Thank you. I hope so.
It will be, for sure. Absolutely will be. For those in the audience who would like to learn more about you and your work, do you have services, offerings, or published works that you would like to discuss?
Well, we absolutely do. I have over 140 books in print. And, the good news is that, they're all available in paperback and Audible and ebooks and all that stuff, but you can also download them all for free at our website. So if you go to outofbodytravel.org, you can download our books for free and you can get them in whatever format you like. But we
Oh,
also have lots and lots of film resources. So, like the first book that I wrote called The Mysteries of the Redemption, a treatise on out of body travel and mysticism, as I think you know, I've been working
yeah.
on the screenplays that I have, and I've been producing it into a film series on our YouTube channel, which is called All the Winds of Heaven. And so you can check that out along with
Yeah.
lots of documentaries and classes and seminars and tons of interviews and live streams and other things at it's at the Out of Body Travel Foundation on YouTube, but it's also linked
Uh-huh.
at the website. So definitely check all that out. And you can always email me at Marilyn Hughes at outofbodytravel.org. I answer all my email.
Oh, Marilyn, you have overdone yourself in this life, haven't you? Wow, and I must say I love the little videos because they are really interesting to watch. It kind of just puts kind of like a vision to what you're because you're reading from it is your book, correct, that you're reading
Right.
from?
Well,
Or
it's
yeah, the video's
what I
made from?
did was I took the book and then I created screenplays because I was actually in development for a couple of years with some people. One of them was with um, one of the people involved was Dean Lyon from the Lord of the Rings, but we couldn't get them $80 million, in financing.
Yeah.
So we left development, but still looking into doing that. And then I started doing it with AI. I'm able to create these concept videos so people can see what it actually looks like, get an idea of what it actually feels like to have these out of body experiences and what some of these different realms actually look like.
I watched a few this morning. People really do need to check them out. They're really, really interesting. I just love it. Just love it.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, it's called All the Winds of Heaven. It's linked up right on the front page at outofbodytravel.org. And I'm really excited about it just because I literally spent about 5 years writing the screenplays. And then, of
Wow.
course, I'm, converting the screenplays to a different screenplay format
Yeah.
for the artificial intelligence that I have to use for them. So it's directly from the books, but it's a little different than it's not word for word from the books because I had created the
Good.
screenplays according so hope that's helpful, but
You're
it's a little
busy.
different.
Busy woman. Oh my goodness. I don't even know how you would do that. That's very, very interesting. Marilyn, I can't thank you enough. I didn't even get to the out of body stuff today. So you know what that means. You have to come back,
I'd be
right?
happy to come back. I'd love to.
Oh, that was so fun. But I do want to thank you so much for sharing your journey with so much openness and grace. And every time you return to yourself and speak from that remembrance, you bring back truth, not just from your near death experience, but from the deeper knowing that you carry. So I am truly grateful that you're here today and you are sharing that remembrance with us.
Thank you so much, MJ. I really enjoyed meeting you and our
Yeah.
conversation, and it's been great, and I'd love to come back whenever you want me to.
Fantastic. And to the audience and all those listening, stories like Marilyn's remind us that the journey isn't only about where we go, it's about what we remember when we return. May this conversation encourage you to return to yourself, to listen inward, and to trust the truth that's always been there. And until next time, stay open, stay curious, and keep returning to the truth within you.